So we are now going to move on to our final speakers of the day, a real treat and something I've personally been looking forward to. Haley Ramm is a young actress. She began her professional career at the tender age of 11, working with the likes of Rob Reiner and Jodie Foster. She's part of the young Hollywood, as we call it, which I think is the good part. The 24-year-old Dallas native is a dedicated philanthropist who's become a driving force for autoimmune diseases. The drive is fueled by one thing, which I have in common with her, not a deep love for her mother, but a deep love for my mother, who also is an autoimmune disease patient. But her mother, Barbara, suffers daily from a multitude of autoimmune diseases. And so we have something in common that we both fight on a daily basis for our moms. Together, this dynamic mother and daughter duo founded the Los Angeles Autoimmune Disease Walk and raised over $100,000 for research and awareness in their inaugural year. And being a walk expert from my days at the American Heart Association, raising $100,000 for autoimmune disease is a lot of work, and I applaud them on that. A working actress since she was 8 years old, Haley uses her entertainment industry connections and social media to spread the word around autoimmune diseases. She's best known for playing Brenna on the ABC family's Chasing Life. She's also had roles in X-Men, The Last Stand, Disconnect. I just read yesterday online that she actually played young Jennifer Aniston, and rumor has it, unfortunately, she ended up on the cutting room floor. And so her pictures in the room, in the bedrooms and films, pictures of her playing the young Aniston is in photography used in the film, but her role was got cut. But very interesting background, and she's been very active while in Hollywood, where her mother has also moved to help her. This year, Haley has 2 films set to release. Maybe she'll share a little bit on that. And Barbara is equally committed to the cause and has become a potent patient voice due to her willingness to step up and publicly share her journey from ill and undiagnosed for over 30 years to finally being diagnosed with multiple autoimmune diseases. Her past careers in advertising and real estate provide the business and entrepreneurial spirit needed to make the Los Angeles Autoimmune Disease Walk a success. She's actively involved in patient advocacy for Arta, as well as a couple other organizations, and we really are honored that they came in all the way from Hollywood. So please help me welcome Barbara and Haley Ramm. And as they get set, I will let them join the podium, and then I'll be back up to moderate any questions that you all have as well. So welcome to the stage.
Hello. I promise I printed my speech. I just left it in my hotel. Also, something that Virginia said in the video, she said that when she first started talking about autoimmune disease, that a lot of people thought that she was talking about cars. We had a music event leading up to our walk this year, and as I was telling the bar about the event, he said, "I'd love to be involved, I love cars." And I said, this is why we need to talk about this more. Okay. Thank you for having me today. My name is Haley Ramm. I'm 25 years old from Los Angeles, California. I'm an actress, autoimmune disease advocate, and most importantly, a daughter in a family dealing with autoimmune disease. Here's my journey to coming to understand what autoimmune disease is. When I was a kid growing up in the cozy neighborhoods of North Dallas, Texas, my mom would shuttle me from short film shoot to commercial set. We were always very close, and she very supportive. I had the bug and dreamt of pursuing a life as an actress. So when I was 12, we packed up the car and headed to Hollywood for pilot season. To us, this was a really original idea. We'd planned to stay for 2 to 3 months, but amazingly, I had a stroke of luck. And jobs came. 3 months turned to 6, which turned to 1 year, then many. Living in different apartments in the valley, money was tight, but as long as we were together, we knew everything would be okay. Living all for the dream. Eventually, it felt like my mom and I had this roommate-type relationship. Through it all, we had our ups and downs, but we had each other's backs. When I was 8 years old, my family was driving home from one of my brother's hockey tournaments in Nashville. My mom laid in the back the whole way. Then when I was 13, my mom was driving home from her job at a children's boutique. She felt sick, very sick, queasy, driving, trying to keep her head up and pulling over to take breaths. I wanted to drive for her, but I wasn't old enough. I just wanted to get her home. I felt helpless and had a terrible feeling something bigger was going on. She was experiencing the same symptoms as our drive home from Nashville. Just get her home. We didn't know what was causing her to feel this way. When we were kids, she seemed to always feel tired and generally unwell. But as a strong Southern woman, it's my mom's style to just mask it and slap a smile on her face. For 6 years, my mom and I lived in Los Angeles while my dad and brother worked and went to school in Dallas. Then finally, they joined us out west. I was so excited for everyone to be together again, but knew the circumstances. My dad left a stable job. My brother changed schools, and my mom's health was noticeably deteriorating. Exactly how much, we had no clue yet. The extensive search all started while on a hike at Fryman Canyon in Los Angeles. Mom had a sharp, intense pain in her abdomen and could not finish the hike. She scheduled a doctor's appointment, which led to another, and many, many more. And finally, after over a year of searching, we knew. It was cervical cancer. I had heard of cervical cancer. We knew what was wrong, finally. The doctors decided to do a radical hysterectomy, and they got it all. We were scared, but relieved. Then months later, Mom's skin started becoming extremely irritated and rashy in random places like her eyelids, palms, cheeks. Many more doctor's appointments later, they landed on a diagnosis of the first autoimmune disease she would get called dermatomyositis. None of us had ever heard of that one. And then the next 3 years, the strange diagnosis rolled in like a Mardi Gras parade. She tested positive for lupus, then rheumatoid arthritis, and then the worst one for her, relapsing polychondritis. And we thought dermatomyositis was long. RP, like dermatomyositis, is extremely rare, 3 in a million to be exact. The diagnosis became more and more shocking to the point where it kind of just makes you numb. When I was 21, I got an apartment of my own. I know everyone in this room did the same thing. Probably at an even younger age, and you probably felt free and excited to conquer the world in your own way, to show the world who you were. But autoimmune disease felt like a huge part of who I was, and I wasn't even the patient. Over the past 3 years, the changes the diseases were causing have become more and more prevalent. She couldn't drive anymore because of feeling disoriented. Walking to the grocery store resulted in unexpected injuries, falling and not having the muscle strength to get back up. Phone calls starting with, "Don't worry, I'm fine, I'm just a little scratched up." I hated that she didn't feel safe being alone. I felt guilty for living a healthy life. It felt like I was leaving my friend behind, and I didn't want to leave my friend behind. I wanted her and my dad to be okay and have fun after our mother-daughter adventure came to an end. I was feeling guilty for even going out for a drink with friends. And none of this was my mom's doing. The truth is, if she could, the truth is that even if she wanted to be there, she couldn't. That screamed at me. Germ-infested places are a huge no for AD patients. I hated myself for enjoying. How could I when my mom can't? This isn't fair, I would think. These feelings started to snowball, and to say I couldn't deal is an understatement. I resented anyone who didn't know what a life without AD was like. For 3 years, I was a part of a show called Chasing Life. Ironic, I know. The show was about a young woman named April who was diagnosed with leukemia in the first episode. I played Brenna, the caretaker, the scared youngest daughter in the family. I'm sure you can guess that storyline was not a stretch for me. My work became blurred with my reality. Art imitated life. At the table reads where writers bring out their best tearjerker scenes. Dialogue about being severely ill and not knowing what the future holds always hit me harder than anyone because I knew most likely I'd go home that day and have a very similar conversation about my own family with my brother. Both of us at a loss of what to say, but saying anything to make each other feel better. Well, this is life, right? Both of us at a loss. Why did this have to happen to our mom? We act like it's okay when we hang up the phone. I was starting to feel isolated among friend groups because who could possibly understand? I know my brother felt the same way. We're very lucky to have some super strength significant others in our lives. I'm fortunate enough to have an amazing man in my life named Peter. He's been there for countless late night, angry cry sessions and anxiety attacks, waking up in the middle of the night, terrified and tear-stained. This was becoming too much. This was no way to live. I got a therapist who became very concerned about my emotional state and how it was affecting my body. Not able to sleep and not able to eat made for some rough days, and add an important producer meeting to it all and forget about it. I'm throwing up in the bathroom before it even starts. Growing up, I was a very positive person, the quality I loved most about myself. I prided myself on being so good at turning a bad situation into a positive one. The ups and downs of show business were stressful and sometimes upsetting, but always okay to navigate. I always knew everything would be okay. I've lost that sense of positivity, and I've had to go on a therapeutic journey to find it again. I felt lost. Before autoimmune disease hit my family, it seemed like anything was possible. I was living a life not based on fear. I didn't wake up every day with a doomsday feeling. I'm not the one going through numerous biopsies, tests, blood drawings, etc., trying different drugs and medications that don't fix the problem but only mask it and causes other terrifying side effects. Her pain is never gone, it never rests, and it doesn't care what she wants that day. Autoimmune disease not only affects the individual with the condition, it also affects every member of the family. The way the family feels about, how it affects a loved one, and the cohesiveness of the family is very important. Family members may experience many of the emotional reactions that the person with an autoimmune disease does, ranging from anger and depression to fear of the future or complications. Sometimes family members react more strongly and possibly even more irrationally than the person who's been diagnosed with the autoimmune disease. My father, Brian, my brother, Max, and myself can attest to that. I've spoken to many family members and friends who are caretakers to AD patients. I remember after a fundraiser for our second annual Los Angeles Autoimmune Walk, my old neighbor Shauna, an extremely kind, positive, and gentle human, asked me how I was doing in day-to-day life. She grabbed my hands and I said, "It was really hard, and I'm really scared." I started to tear up, and she said what I feel every day, but couldn't put my finger on it, even though it was so simple. She said, "It feels like you're grieving right in front of the person." I felt so understood and didn't want to let go of her hands and go back into the world where most people didn't seem to get it. Medical research is expensive, and healthcare is complex. Who knew? I know that, and I know that of all the major diseases being researched, not a single one of them has enough funding. We're all stretching dollars to find cures, but autoimmune disease is virtually unknown. Ask yourself, what do you know about autoimmune disease? Have you heard of it? Do you know which diseases are ADs? Standing here today, my understanding of autoimmune disease is still limited. Look, overall, if we all sat around and said, "Mom has to get sick, what is she going to get?" it wouldn't be this. It's like driving at night with your headlights off. There are so many of us who are dealing with this big question mark we call autoimmune disease. And it is our hope that with the efforts and cooperation of the fine people of Washington, more attention can be given and research funding can be allocated towards autoimmune disease, and a little light will shine on the road that lies ahead, so that all of us dealing with loved ones with an autoimmune disease will be that much less afraid. Thank you.
Well, you've already seen me cry, so I don't think I'm nervous anymore. I want to thank Virginia and Pat for inviting us to share our story with you today. I'm not a doctor, I'm just a layperson. I don't even have a chance of playing one on TV like my daughter. I've been a PTA president, a small business owner, a realtor, entrepreneur, proud stage mom to a musician and to an actor. But what I am now is an autoimmune disease patient, but probably most important of all, is a patient advocate. And I think that my story may be more extreme than some, but it may be right on par with others. I am very committed to raising awareness and research dollars for autoimmune disease so that the road for others is smoother than my own. I am very fortunate that my family is along for the ride. I was not always so centered, and my family was not always so bonded. About 2 years ago, I found myself at a juncture. My own journey with autoimmune disease includes over 2 decades as an undiagnosed patient, and then an onslaught of diagnoses starting in around 2011, and then a years-long grieving process for those losses that invariably come with chronic and rare diseases. So there I was standing at this crossroads. I was tired of crying, my family was tired of being sad, they were tired of crying, they were tired of seeing me cry. Most of all, I was really just tired of feeling powerless. And powerless is a feeling that really reverberates through the autoimmune community. I had just come through a debilitating depression that may have been med-induced, but was definitely compounded by the utter insanity and devastation that comes with these chronic illnesses. But depression wasn't all that was happening in my life. My cognitive abilities were also impaired. I was no longer driving, didn't want to hit a pedestrian. I had lost 90% of my independence, and I was no longer walking alone the 2 blocks to our neighborhood market. I was just too fatigued to cook or clean for my family, and I used to love to cook. My last independent outing with my own car included a ride in the front seat of a police car. I had taken 2 very nasty back-to-back falls, and then with a good dose of anger, I confronted the construction workers who stood there watching and did nothing to help me up. Now, if you know anybody with dermatomyositis or any of those other myositis conditions, it's very easy for us, or very difficult for us to get up and down. So me getting up and down is kind of funny looking. And I was just shocked that they didn't help. I confronted them. There may have been profanity. I spun on my heel. I spun on my heel, and as best I could with bloody knees and torn cartilage, which I found out later, I fell again. And an officer was driving by and saw me hit the pavement. To this day, I still think he just stopped because he thought I was drunk. And no, I wasn't drunk in the middle of the day, just wobbly, because I had these diseases that make me very wobbly. I was really tired of feeling like my life was over. I needed to find a way to feel even just a tiny bit human again. Now, our family has always actively volunteered wherever needed, but my light bulb moment came in a phone call with Virginia Ladd and other Arta team members. They are always interested in growing their grassroots volunteer base, and she asked if we would be interested in putting on the Los Angeles Autoimmune Walk. We readily said yes. Now, my family has collected an eclectic group of friends during our dozen years in Los Angeles. It paid off mightily when staffing our group of volunteers. Our friends are activists, they're musicians, they're actors, writers, designers, they're savvy business people with good connections, and they're patients who many for the very, very first time became patient advocates. These people really went above and beyond. When my brain was foggy from meds or fatigue, or when I lost my train of thought in the middle of walk meetings, which happens quite a bit, these people picked up my slack, and boy, did they run with it. I think I spent at least 80% of my time that first year working from bed. Like other patients in our growing community, fatigue is just one of those blankets that I cannot shake off. It covers every aspect of my life, keeps me from spending time with my friends and my family. I do stay housebound most of the time because I am so immunosuppressed. The mainstay of our meds, of course, is Prednisone, as somebody mentioned back there. What a drug. Saves lives, makes us miserable in the process. We should be grateful, but the signature side effects from long-term use are the moon pie face and the buffalo hump. Wouldn't you think that diseases that strike mostly females would have less horrific names? Let me take a minute to share with you what my diagnoses are. I willingly talk about them because so many cannot, and for a variety of reasons. Maybe they just can't find the words. I know when I was first diagnosed, it felt like there was a tornado in my brain just whirring around. I couldn't get it to stop. I couldn't even get it to stop enough to pull out a thought. I understand how they feel. Maybe their family doesn't understand. Maybe that's another reason why they don't talk about it. Or maybe they're frightened of losing their employment. Yes, that happens. Whatever reason, there are millions of autoimmune disease patients who are just living in the shadows. Now, I hid it myself for years and years. I'd put a smile on my face, I'd get to work, but at home, with no one to see me except for my immediate family, I would crash and burn. If I wasn't working or volunteering at my kids' school, I dropped the charade of wellness. This went on for years and years. In 2011, I was diagnosed with dermatomyositis. It took me until about 2013 to learn to say it correctly. I had experienced many of the symptoms for years, but it took a new primary care doctor that I had in Los Angeles by the name of Dr. Dorothy Lowe to figure it out. I will never forget her name. She recognized the trademark DM rash and my complaints of fatigue and muscle weakness. She went back over my chart, noted that my SED rate had been high for months and months. I think she thought I was just getting a sore throat for months and months. I don't know. I had also just been diagnosed and treated for a not your garden variety form of cervical cancer, and cancer often precedes or follows a dermatomyositis diagnosis. That internist referred me to a rheumatologist and the testing began. And on the heels of dermatomyositis, I was diagnosed with a few other autoimmune conditions and some secondary conditions to autoimmune disease. Of course, that's very common also. Then around 2015, I started having facial pain, chest pain, outer and inner ear pain, and I noticed that my nose was ever so slightly moving to the left. I would say to people all the time, does my nose look crooked to you? They were like, your nose looks fine. It's like, no, it really hurts. I just started Googling because I really didn't know what else to do. I thought, this has to be something autoimmune related because I have so many other things. So Google I did, and the only thing I came up with was relapsing polychondritis. And my own rheumatologist at the time didn't think it was RP. So I started emailing photos of my nose and my red ears and description of my symptoms to specialists all over Los Angeles. Now, most doctors don't publish their emails, and I'm pretty sure it's to avoid patients like me. But I'm very tenacious, and I found the email of a doctor at UCLA who answered me right away. Dr. Jeffrey Sue, I think his name was. And he agreed with my opinion, and he referred me to a different rheumatologist who is also a rare disease specialist. So while DM likes to destroy the muscles closest to the trunk of the body, think standing, sitting, drying your hair, climbing and descending stairs, it also may lay claim to the heart, the esophagus, and the lungs. And the relapsing polychondritis, well, that attacks the body's cartilage. And you have cartilage in places that you would never even imagine until they start to hurt. Nose, ears, sternum, your ribs, your eyes, your aorta, your trachea. In my case, I believe the number one trigger was and is stress. That fight or flight feeling, I think I was born with it. It's been a constant throughout my entire life. I was a total type A personality all through the 80s. Maybe another trigger of mine is toxins. My family may have come from a long line of farmers, but in the 60s and 70s, we were just suburban gardeners. And there were new pesticides on the market, and every neighbor loved to kill weeds and bugs, and little did we know that sucking on blades of grass in the hot summer sun and rolling around the green lawns may alter our health. I grew up in Houston, where my dad worked for a company making oil and gas tanks. The regulations to keep that poison from pouring from the refinery smokestacks was not in place. I think the EPA started around 1970. Processed food, probably another factor, and hormones. I've had these triggers all of my life. Now, my husband and I have a different life now. He no longer works a 9-to-5 job. He's there when I need him. We juggle doctor appointments. We struggle to pay the monthly insurance premium. We worry about high deductibles and not enough money to pay the other bills. My entire family worries about the latest drug protocol, whether it will work, and we not so patiently wait out the months and months it takes to find out if this really is the winning combo that's going to put me into remission. I'm still waiting for that, but I'm hopeful, ever hopeful. And hope is really all we have to cling to. At our inaugural walk, I saw hope on the faces of the good people of Los Angeles who came out with their families and friends and found hundreds of other patients struggling with so many of the same physical issues. Now, our goal is to harness that hope and let it fuel our push for change in how these diseases are diagnosed, treated, and talked about. And why did we choose to volunteer with Arta? Because they're the only group bringing a national focus to autoimmunity in its entirety. rather than focusing on just one of the over 100 diseases that fall under that autoimmunity category. To me, a patient who has an overlap of diseases, finding a common etiology is so very important. If there's a silver lining in any of this, it's definitely the fellow patients that I've met through support groups. They show me what true grace and fortitude is every single day. One of those patients is a friend of mine by the name of Lisa Weekly. She also has RP. But not only does she have autoimmune disease, she's also a caretaker for other people in her family. I really don't know how she does it. These are her words. My name is Lisa, and I have RP, lupus, and other autoimmune problems. What most people don't know is the extreme impact it has on who I am. My beliefs, my happiness, my attitude, and communication. I used to jump out of bed with a smile on my face, never needing self-motivation. I have less patience, I battle depression, I long for hikes with the sun on my face. I miss dancing, laughing, and just talking with a group of friends. When I was first diagnosed, my daughter was 15. I was always the person who enjoyed helping others, but she had to help me shower, dress, and get into my wheelchair. Such a forced character change. The worst part about it is not the constant pain. It's not the doctors who made me more concerned about addiction than helping me have some quality of life. It's not even doing without because you have to buy medication. It's watching your child stay home doing adult responsibilities instead of enjoying her childhood. It's watching my husband pray in tears as I have another health procedure. The very hardest part of chronic illnesses is the emptiness where joy used to be. I really want Lisa and every other autoimmune patient to know that there are people like us out there fighting for them. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, I was undiagnosed for decades. I first noticed the muscle weakness and achy joints in my early 20s, and that was in the 1980s. I have had doctors tell me that I am crazy. I had one refer me directly to another doctor who looked at my chart and wrote a prescription for an anti-anxiety med without asking me one single question. When my face was swollen and my palms and my eyelids were bleeding from a dermatomyositis flare, which I had no idea that that's what it was at the time, a dermatologist told me I was having an allergic reaction to makeup, and then he went on to pitch his own brands. My undiagnosed diseases were the underlying cause for 2 emergency C-sections and 2 premature babies. The prematurity caused learning differences, and both of my children, my son, had a number of health problems. More stress. My husband has reminded me this week of the strange health issues that have repeatedly cropped up in our married life. Most revolve around my body just simply quitting on me. I push and push to accomplish things and then literally just collapse. And it still happens with no warning. Now, every doctor scenario was a little bit stranger than the next, and I finally just quit going to the doctor because I figured they had absolutely no answers for me. I dealt with the flares as they came up. I didn't know they were called flares at the time because I didn't know it was autoimmune disease. Now I know. Sometimes I would spend weeks in bed. I'd get up, I'd get dressed, I'd act like it was fine when I had to, but back in bed I'd go as soon as I got home. This is pretty common. This went on for years. Through it all, my family has cried with me. They're no longer appalled at my gallows humor, and we have hashed out issues that would have broken a weaker bond than we share. We've all had to learn to listen, and we've had to learn to share our feelings. We came through emotional fire, and there was a time I wondered if the fractures could be mended, but the good news is that families can be mended. As a community, we have so much work to do. I want to see a time where the over 100 autoimmune diseases are recognized in the media for what they are, autoimmune diseases. Until we can teach the media how to report on these illnesses, how do we expect the public to understand? I want to see a grassroots group of volunteers make presentations to high schools all over America so that we have an educated group of young people coming up who can teach their own families about autoimmune disease. This is doable, and as long as my heart keeps beating, I will be calling on my own friends and family to help me. Thank you so much for having us. It was such an honor to be here. Thank you.